The once vibrant world of Aurelia burned under a crimson sky. Towering cities, once symbols of peace and progress, now smoldered in ruin. The air was thick with ash and despair. Somewhere deep beneath the surface, the heart of the Virelian civilization beat slower, fading as the ruthless invaders tightened their grip. The Virelians were a species built on wisdom, science, and diplomacy. Their shining towers and crystalline spires had reached toward the stars for centuries, carrying hopes of friendship and knowledge. But no amount of negotiation or goodwill could stop the Xalcor, an alien force as merciless as it was powerful. With armor like living metal and weapons that tore through defenses effortlessly, the Xalcor laid waste to everything in their path. Inside the command center, High Counselor Maron stared at the flickering holographic map. Red markers blinked relentlessly, showing the advancing Xalcor battalions crushing every resistance point. He clenched his jaw, knowing that the defense forces were stretched too thin. The soldiers fought bravely, but the invaders' technology was unlike anything the Virelians had ever faced. "Send the distress signal now," Maron ordered. His voice was calm but heavy with urgency. Technicians scrambled to comply. The Virelian distress beacon, a device designed only for the most dire emergencies, activated with a pulse that cut through the silence of space. It carried a simple message: "Help us. Our world is dying." Beyond their star system, the message traveled into the void, a desperate plea echoing through the endless dark. Many races would hear it, but the question was who would answer. As the Council watched the monitors, a faint hope flickered. They knew their chances were slim. The Xalcor showed no mercy, and the galaxy's great powers were often indifferent to smaller worlds caught in the crossfire. But if there was even a single chance for survival, they had to try. Outside the shattered city, families huddled in underground shelters, clutching each other while distant explosions shook the ground. Children whispered stories of heroes who would come to save them, tales passed down from ancient times. But the adults knew the truth. They were alone, waiting for a miracle that might never come. In the heart of the wreckage, a Virelian engineer worked feverishly to repair a communications array. His hands moved with practiced precision, ignoring the smoke stinging his eyes. The last transmission was already halfway across the galaxy. Now all they could do was wait. Somewhere far beyond the stars, ships would hear the call. Some would choose to ignore it. Others might come too late. But in the shadows of this dying world, a new chapter was about to begin, one that no one expected. The distant hum of engines suddenly pierced the sky. The Virelian distress signal rippled through the vast reaches of space like a beacon of desperation. It traveled light years, cutting through nebulae and asteroid fields, passing countless worlds and civilizations. Yet, as the hours turned to days, no response came. Across the galaxy, the signal sparked curiosity at first, a ripple in the cosmic noise. Starships slowed to scan the strange plea from a distant, unknown species. Some recorded it, others discussed it briefly over secure channels. But when the full story emerged, an alien world ravaged by a ruthless invader, few felt compelled to act. For many, it was simply not their war. Galactic politics were complicated, alliances fragile. The major powers weighed risks and benefits. To intervene meant risking lives, resources, and potential retaliation from the Xalcor, an enemy whose brutality was whispered about in fear. Most chose safety over sacrifice. Even smaller neighboring species, who might have sympathized, hesitated. The cost seemed too high, the outcome uncertain. Some dismissed the Virelians as weak, unable to defend themselves. Others feared that helping them would drag their own worlds into endless conflict. Back on Aurelia, the silence was deafening. Each unanswered call tore deeper into the hearts of its people. The council met in dim rooms beneath shattered halls, their faces pale in the flickering light. "No one is coming," whispered High Counselor Moran, the weight of failure heavy in his voice. Still, the Virelians refused to surrender. Their spirit, born from centuries of resilience, pushed them to hold on, no matter how slim the chances. Scientists worked feverishly to find ways to slow the invaders. Militias trained for guerrilla warfare in ruined cities. But the reality was harsh. Without allies, their fight was hopeless. In the cold vacuum of space, distant worlds watched quietly. Some fleets passed the signal by, diverted by their own concerns. Trade routes remained open, commerce continued, and life went on as usual for many. The galaxy was vast, and tragedy on one distant planet often felt like a drop in an endless ocean. Yet not all were indifferent. A handful of fringe groups, mercenaries, and rogue pilots debated in hidden corners of space. Whispers spread of a legendary force known simply as the Deathworlders, humans from a small blue planet called Earth, known for surviving the deadliest environments and enemies. But even those whispers were uncertain. Stories half believed and dismissed by many as myth. The galaxy's great powers still chose inaction. The Xalcor tightened their noose around Varelia, their war machines advancing like an unstoppable storm. In one last act of hope, the Virelian Council broadcast a continuous signal, an open invitation to any who might come. It was not just a plea for help, but a promise. Whoever answered would find a people desperate but willing to stand and fight. Beneath the fading light of their broken world, the Virelians waited. Time was slipping away. The Xalcor war drums thundered closer. Their cries for aid seemed to dissolve into the cold emptiness of space, until a new, unfamiliar energy flickered on the edge of their star system. A fleet appeared, dark, imposing, and unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The sudden appearance of the fleet took the Virelians by surprise. At first, they feared it was another wave of the ruthless Xalcor, arriving to crush their last hopes. But the ships were different, larger, heavier, and bearing markings none had seen before. The vessels moved with quiet confidence, cutting through the blackness of space like predators. Their armor was rugged and scarred, not polished and gleaming like the Xalcor. The Virelian sensors detected something unfamiliar, a rawness, a sense of untamed strength. High Counselor Moran ordered his advisors to open a cautious channel of communication. The message sent was simple: identify yourselves. A rough, no-nonsense voice crackled over the comms, speaking in heavily accented Galactic Basic. We're humans, from Earth. The word humans sparked a flurry of whispers in the council chambers. Earth was a distant legend, a planet long thought to be barely more than myth. Stories told of humans as survivors, Deathworlders who thrived on some of the most hostile planets ever discovered. They were said to be fearless, brutal when needed, and wildly unpredictable. The Virelians had never dealt with humans before. Their culture was steeped in caution and careful diplomacy. Now they faced a species known for diving headfirst into danger with reckless courage. The human commander, a grizzled woman named Captain Reyes, spoke again. "We got your signal. We don't run from fights. We're here to help. You got a war. We'll break their teeth." Her words were blunt, almost shocking to the Virelians. But beneath the rough exterior was a promise they desperately needed. Still, mistrust lingered. The Virelians feared that the humans' aggressive tactics might bring more destruction to their fragile world. They feared losing what little remained. Captain Reyes understood their fears. "Look, we don't want to make this worse. But if you want to survive, you need fighters who know how to win in impossible situations. That's what we are." The humans began scanning the battle zones, sharing tactical data with the Virelian commanders. Their approach was unlike anything the Virelians had seen, focused on adaptability, raw instinct, and brutal efficiency. Meanwhile, human engineers and medics landed in small teams on the ground. They moved through the ruins without hesitation, tending to wounded civilians and repairing critical systems under fire. Their presence was a shock, but a welcome one. In the war rooms, the Virelian generals debated. Could they trust these strange newcomers? Could the galaxy's toughest survivors save a race unaccustomed to war? Outside, the Xalcor noticed the new fleet and shifted their focus. The invaders snarled in frustration, facing a foe that fought differently, one who wasn't afraid to engage in close combat, to push the limits of endurance and tactics. The first skirmishes began, sudden and violent. The Deathworlders hit fast and hard, striking where the Xalcor least expected. Their ruthless efficiency and refusal to back down sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The Virelians watched with cautious hope. Their world was far from safe, But the arrival of the Deathworlders was the spark they had prayed for. A new chance to fight back, to survive. The war room was filled with tension. Virillian diplomats and human officers stood side by side, yet the air was thick with distrust. The Virillians spoke carefully, choosing words with precision, while the humans favored blunt honesty and action over endless debate. High Counselor Moran paced slowly, his mind heavy with doubt. Could these fierce humans, so unlike his own people, truly be the allies they desperately needed? Their arrival had changed the battle's course, but had also brought uncertainty. Captain Reyes folded her arms, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "We don't do alliances based on trust," she said plainly. "We do them based on results. You want to keep your world? Follow our lead." The Virillians winced at her words. Diplomacy and mutual respect were the foundation of their culture. This directness felt like a challenge to their very way of life. But the situation was dire, and time was running out. The Council reluctantly agreed to let the humans take a leadership role in the combat operations. Plans were drawn quickly, blending the Virillians' technological knowledge with the humans' brutal battlefield tactics. It was a clash of styles, strategy versus instinct, precision versus raw power. The first joint mission was fraught with tension. Human squads moved in fast, striking enemy supply lines and ambushing patrols with ruthless efficiency. Virillian tech teams provided drone support and electronic warfare, disabling Zalcor defenses from afar. At first, the cooperation was clumsy. Miscommunications and cultural clashes slowed progress. The Virillians were used to careful planning and minimizing casualties, while the humans accepted losses as part of survival. But as battles raged, a grudging respect began to grow. The humans admired the Virillians' intelligence and resourcefulness. The Virillians learned to value the humans' courage and willingness to fight in impossible conditions. In the field, the humans adapted quickly to the alien terrain. Their experience surviving Deathworlds, planets where every step could mean death, gave them an edge. They moved through ruined cities and toxic wastelands without hesitation, using guerrilla tactics that the Zalcor were unprepared for. The Virillians, inspired by the humans' tenacity, began training their militias to fight more aggressively. Slowly, the tide of battle began to shift. But the alliance was fragile. Old habits died hard. The Virillians' reluctance to accept the harsh realities of war clashed with the humans' blunt pragmatism. Tensions flared during strategic meetings, with heated arguments over risk and sacrifice. One night, as a storm raged outside, Marin and Reyes met alone. Words were exchanged, some bitter, some hopeful. Marin admitted his fears, that the humans' way might destroy his people's soul. Reyes countered that without toughness, there would be no soul left to save. They reached a tentative understanding. To survive, the Virillians would have to change, and the humans would have to respect the values worth fighting for. As dawn broke, both leaders returned to their teams with a renewed resolve. The uneasy alliance was no longer just a necessity. It was becoming a partnership forged in fire, a union of two very different species standing together against a common enemy. Outside the war room, the Zalcor prepared for their next assault, unaware that the galaxy's most unlikely defenders were ready to fight back with everything they had. The first strike under the Joint Command was nothing short of chaos, but the kind that brought hope. The Deathworlders didn't wait for perfect plans or reinforcements. They struck fast, hitting the Zalcor where they least expected. Supply convoys, communication relays, and command outposts deep behind enemy lines. Captain Reyes led the charge personally, her squad moving like shadows through the shattered remains of a once great city. The air was thick with smoke, and the distant roar of explosions echoed like thunder. Her team used guerrilla tactics honed on hostile planets, ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, traps laid with ruthless precision. The Zalcor were ruthless but unprepared for this kind of fight. Their warriors were trained for direct, overwhelming force, not unpredictable, guerrilla warfare. The Deathworlders exploited every weakness, disappearing before the invaders could mount a counterattack. Meanwhile, Virillian tech teams jammed enemy communications and hacked into their sensors, sowing confusion. The combined assault shattered the calm the Zalcor relied on. Their supply lines faltered, and command centers were thrown into chaos. As the humans and Virelians fought side by side, the differences that once divided them became strengths. Virelian engineers repaired damaged systems in the field, while human medics moved swiftly, patching wounds and keeping fighters alive under fire. In one brutal encounter, Ray's squad was pinned down by heavy Xalcor fire in a narrow alleyway. With no room to maneuver, they fought with knives and bare hands, every move desperate but precise. Virelians provided covering fire from drones overhead, while reinforcements arrived through underground tunnels the Virelians had mapped. The clash was savage and intense. Deathworlders showed no hesitation, while the Xalcor faltered against the humans' ferocity and the Virelians' ingenuity. By nightfall, the invaders had been pushed back, their forces scattered and demoralized. The battlefield was a mess of smoldering wreckage and shattered dreams, but the victory was undeniable. It was the first real sign that the tide might be turning. Yet the cost was clear. Both humans and Virelians had lost comrades. Graves were dug in hurried ceremonies beneath blood-red skies. The reality of war settled heavily on all who survived. Captain Reyes surveyed the aftermath with grim determination. "This is only the beginning," she said. "We don't stop. We keep hitting them harder, faster, smarter." High Counselor Moran nodded, his respect for the Deathworlders growing. "Your chaos has brought order to this battle," he admitted quietly. "We will learn from it and fight alongside you." The Alliance, once uneasy, was now a force of nature. The Deathworlders had unleashed a storm that Xalcor hadn't seen coming, a relentless, chaotic force born from survival on the harshest worlds. As the invaders regrouped, their leaders realized that the humans and their Virelian allies were not the easy conquest they had assumed. The war for Virelia had become a brutal dance of chaos and cunning, and the Deathworlders led the way. The victory at the shattered city ignited a new flame of hope across Virelia. For the first time in months, the people dared to believe that survival was possible. But the war was far from over. The Xalcor were fierce, and their resolve only hardened by defeat. In the fortified command center, human and Virelian leaders worked side by side like never before. Scientists from Virelia exchanged data with human engineers, merging advanced technology with practical battlefield experience. Together, they crafted new weapons, improved defenses, and developed tactics tailored to the brutal terrain. Captain Reyes paced the room, her sharp eyes scanning the holographic battle map. "We've seen where they're weakest," she said. "Their supply lines are stretched thin, and their command units rely too heavily on centralized control. If we disrupt their communication networks, we can throw their entire operation into chaos." The Virelians agreed, adding insights on local geography and enemy movements. With every meeting, the two species grew closer, not just as allies, but as comrades bound by a common cause. On the ground, joint strike teams moved swiftly and decisively. Human scouts led Virelian troops through dense jungles and toxic wastelands, places where only the toughest could survive. The Deathworlders' experience on hostile planets proved invaluable. They navigated deadly terrain and ambushed enemy forces with precision. The Xalcor, frustrated by their losses and constant harassment, launched a massive counterattack to regain control. But the combined forces were ready. Electronic warfare teams jammed enemy signals while stealth units infiltrated supply depots, planting explosives and crippling vital infrastructure. In one critical battle, the humans and Virelians fought shoulder to shoulder on a barren plain scorched by previous skirmishes. The Xalcor poured in waves of heavily armed troops, confident they could crush the defenders, but the joint forces held firm. Reyes fought fiercely at the front lines, rallying soldiers with fierce determination. Virelian sharpshooters picked off key targets, while human engineers deployed automated turrets that shredded enemy ranks. The battle was brutal, and the ground soaked with blood. When the dust settled, the Xalcor were forced to retreat once again. Their grip on Virelia loosened, and the invaders' confidence began to waver. Back in the command center, the mood was cautiously optimistic. High Counselor Moran addressed the assembled leaders. "We have turned the tide," he said solemnly. "But this is only the beginning. We must remain vigilant and united." Captain Reyes nodded. We're just getting started. The Xalcor will come back harder, but so will we, together." Across the planet, citizens emerged from shelters, their eyes filled with renewed hope. The alliance between the Virelians and Deathworlders had become more than just a military partnership. It was a symbol of resilience, of survival against impossible odds. The war was far from won, but the turning point had come. For the first time, the Virelians could believe they might reclaim their world. And with the Deathworlders at their side, they would fight to the last breath. The echoes of battle still lingered in the air, thick with smoke and sorrow. Virelia's cities lay shattered, monuments to a peace that had been violently torn apart. The scars of war were etched into every corner, burned-out buildings, shattered streets, and countless graves. Victory had come at a heavy price. Both the humans and the Virelians bore the wounds of countless skirmishes and brutal clashes. Families mourned lost loved ones, and the soldiers carried the memories of battles that would haunt their dreams for years to come. Captain Reyes stood atop a hill overlooking one of the ruined cities. Her face was grim, eyes scanning the horizon where Xalcor forces still lingered in smaller pockets, waiting for another chance. The humans were tough, hardened by deathworlds that tested their limits, but even they felt the weight of loss. Beside her, High Counselor Moran approached, his posture heavy with fatigue and grief. "Your people have shown incredible strength," he said quietly. "But what worries me most is the cost. Our world is broken." Reyes nodded slowly. "War changes everything. We don't fight to break worlds. We fight to save them. But sometimes saving means scars." Despite the devastation, the alliance between the humans and Virelians had grown stronger. Shared hardship had forged bonds deeper than diplomacy or duty. Virelian engineers and human medics worked together in makeshift clinics, patching wounds both physical and emotional. In the streets, Virelians began to rebuild with renewed purpose. Survivors salvaged what they could, clearing debris and restoring power to vital systems. The humans assisted not only with defense but with reconstruction, sharing knowledge and skills learned from their harsh homeworlds. The people were changed. Many Virelians who had once viewed war as a distant nightmare now embraced the strength it demanded. Their culture, rooted in peace and caution, was evolving, tempered by fire and necessity. Yet the memories of those lost weighed heavily. Graves dotted the landscape, simple markers bearing the names of brave souls who had fallen in the fight. Every victory had a price, and the price was etched deep in their hearts. As dusk fell, Reyes and Marin stood together, looking out at a horizon tinged with the fading glow of battle fires. "What happens now?" Marin asked, voice soft. "We prepare," Reyes replied. "This war is far from over, but we're ready, because we fight not just for survival, but for a future worth living." The Xalcor had been pushed back, but their hatred and ambition remained. They would return, scarred but relentless. The Deathworlders and Virelians both knew that peace was fragile, built on the fragile hope of unity. In the quiet moments between battles, they healed their wounds and steeled their resolve. For the scars of war were not just marks of pain, they were symbols of survival and defiance. And as long as those scars remained, so too would the fierce will to protect what remained of their shattered world. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a soft glow across the battered landscape of Virelia. The smoke and ash still lingered in the air, but beneath the gray skies, something new was stirring, a fragile hope born from the fires of war. The alliance between the Virelians and the Deathworlders had transformed from uneasy necessity to unbreakable bond. Together, they had pushed back the Xalcor invaders, driving them from city to city, and finally forcing them to retreat from the planet's surface. Captain Reyes stood beside High Counselor Moran on a rebuilt terrace overlooking the capital. The destruction was still visible, the ruined towers, the crumbled streets, but the signs of renewal were unmistakable. Workers and soldiers moved through the city, rebuilding, planting trees, restoring power grids. "This is only the beginning," Marin said quietly. "Our people have suffered much, but they are strong. With you, we have found a strength we never knew we needed." Reyes nodded, her gaze steady. "Hearth taught us that survival isn't just about fighting. It's about adapting, about standing together when everything falls apart. Varelia will rise again. Across the planet, celebrations mixed with solemn remembrance. The citizens honored their fallen and pledged to build a future worthy of their sacrifice. The humans shared stories of their own battles, reminding the Virelians that even the harshest worlds could become homes. The Xalquer threat was not gone, far from it. Intelligence reports warned that the invaders would regroup and return, hungrier for conquest than ever. But the message was clear. Virelia would not be an easy prize. In the weeks that followed, the joint forces strengthened their defenses. New training programs combined Virelian technology with human combat skills. Cities were rebuilt with resilience in mind, fortified and prepared for the next storm. More importantly, the people had changed. The Virelians who once valued peace above all else now understood that peace required strength and sacrifice. The Deathworlders, hardened by their own brutal history, had found a place among allies who valued more than just survival. Captain Reyes and High Counselor Moran worked to forge a lasting alliance, a partnership that could shape the future of the galaxy. Together, they sent out new calls for aid, inviting other worlds to join their cause and stand against the darkness that threatened them all. The story of Virelia's survival spread across the stars, inspiring hope and courage. It was a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, unity and determination could change the course of destiny. As the sun climbed higher, washing the world in golden light, the people of Virelia looked toward the future, not with fear, but with fierce resolve. The aliens had cried for help, and the Deathworlder fleet had answered. Together, they had forged a new dawn.